Level 1, the grease monkey. You're 19 years old, standing under a car with a wrench in your hand, and you feel something you've never felt before. Competence. The engine is broken. Nobody knows how to fix it, but you do. You've been teaching yourself since you were 15, YouTube videos at night after school, books checked out from the library, asking older mechanics endless questions. You understand how things work. You understand the logic of machines. Your father thinks you're wasting your time. He wanted you to go to college, get a white-collar job, become something respectable. But you couldn't stand the idea of sitting in a classroom learning things you didn't need to know for a job you didn't want. So you dropped out and you got work at a body shop in a bad neighborhood, making $8 an hour, working 60-hour weeks. But here's the thing, you're happy. You're genuinely happy. There's nothing complicated about the work. The car comes in broken. You fix it. The owner drives it away working. This pure cause and effect. This pure value creation. You take something that's useless and you make it valuable again. Your boss is a man named Carl who's been doing this for 30 years. He's solid. He pays you fair wages. He respects your work. You respect him. You're learning from him not just mechanical skills but the philosophy of the work. Quality matters. Your reputation is your only real asset. You treat people right and they come back. You're working on cars 14 hours a day because you want to. You're taking jobs on the side, helping neighbors fix their cars, working weekends under the shade trees in the neighborhood. You're building a reputation as the kid who can fix anything. People start requesting you specifically. They wait for your schedule to open up. They tell their friends about you. You're making decent money now. Enough to rent your own tiny place. Enough to buy tools. Enough to feel like you're building something. You're not thinking about empire. You're not thinking about expansion. You're just thinking about the next car and the satisfaction of getting it right. Level 2, the shop owner. At 25, you open your own shop. It's a small operation, you and 2 employees in a garage that costs too much rent but has good visibility. You've saved for 5 years. You've borrowed from family. You've risked everything on the belief that people will keep coming to you if you give them excellent work. And they do. Your reputation precedes you. People know your name. They know that you'll be honest about what their car needs. You won't upsell them. You won't recommend repairs they don't need. In an industry built on taking advantage of people's ignorance, you're the outlier who actually cares. The money starts coming in. Good money. You're working 80-hour weeks, but you're making decisions. You're building something. You're creating jobs. You're reinvesting profits into better equipment. You're attracting better mechanics. People want to work for you because they know you're skilled and fair. But something is shifting inside you at this point. You're no longer just the best mechanic. You're the owner. And ownership changes how you think about money. When you were making hourly wages, money was simple. You worked, you got paid. But now money is leverage. Money is the tool that builds empires. You're starting to see other opportunities. There's a competitor across town who's been undercutting your prices. You think about putting him out of business. You think about expansion. You think about franchising. You think about creating something that doesn't depend entirely on you showing up. Your hands are starting to stay clean. You're hiring other people to do the mechanical work while you manage. You're good at managing. You're good at sales. You're good at reading what people want and giving it to them. But you notice something, you miss the actual work. You miss the purity of fixing a car. Now you're thinking about profit margins and market share. You've also started dating seriously. A woman named Jessica who works in marketing. She's brilliant. She's ambitious. She sees something in your business that you were barely thinking about. Real potential. She's talking about scaling. She's talking about creating a brand. She's talking about becoming big. You marry her, and that's when everything accelerates. Level 3, the entrepreneur. At 32, you're operating 4 shops across 3 cities. You've brought in outside investors. You've professionalized the operation. You're no longer a mechanic who owns a shop. You're a CEO of a growing company. Jessica has become your COO. She's brilliant at business. She's ruthless about optimization. She's completely transformed how you think about the business. But here's what's happened to you. You've become someone else. The person who loved fixing cars is gone. You're in an office now most of the time. You're reading financial reports. You're in board meetings. You're thinking about quarterly projections. You're thinking about acquisition strategy. The thing you built because you loved it has become something you maintain because you've built an identity around it. And you're winning. The company is growing 30% year over year. You're generating real wealth now. You're buying a house in a neighborhood you couldn't have imagined when you were 18. You're taking vacations to places you've seen in magazines. You're successful. You're genuinely, objectively successful. But you're also becoming aware of something darker. You're becoming the kind of person you used to hate. You're pushing employees hard. You're cutting corners where you can, not on safety but on quality. You're raising prices. You're thinking about eliminating the honest labor model and replacing it with something more efficient. Jessica is encouraging this. She says that sentiment is expensive. She says that business is about maximizing shareholder value, not about feeling good about yourself. You've started to think she's right. You've also become paranoid about the competition. There's a mechanic shop that started to gain market share in one of your territories. You don't know who owns it, but you're investigating. You're thinking about ways to eliminate them. You're thinking about hostile takeover. You're thinking about dirty tactics that, a few years ago, you would have been horrified by. Your relationship with Jessica is transforming too. She's no longer your wife. She's your business partner. You don't have conversations, you have strategy sessions. You don't have intimate moments, you have power consolidations. Your sex life is about dominance and control. You're not sure when the shift happened, but it's complete. You've also stopped being friends with the people who were with you at the beginning. Carl retired, and instead of feeling happy for him, you felt resentful that he wasn't ambitious enough to scale with you. Your original mechanics have been moved to lower-level positions or pushed out entirely. You've brought in corporate people who understand systems and optimization. Your relationship with your family is becoming strained. Your father doesn't understand why you need so much money. Your mother is concerned about your health. You're working too hard, you're stressed, you're not the person she raised. You dismiss her concerns. You're building something. This requires sacrifice. Level 4, the magnate. 40, you've gone public. Your company is now a major player in the automotive service industry. You're worth $900 million on paper. You've got an office on the 40th floor of a downtown high-rise. You've got board members and shareholders and institutional investors. You've built something that most people would consider the ultimate success. And you're completely empty inside. You don't own a single car that you've ever worked on. You haven't had your hands under a hood in 12 years. You can barely remember what it feels like to fix something. You've become completely disconnected from the thing that made you happy in the first place. You're also becoming aware that you've built your empire on increasingly compromised values. Your company is now under investigation for wage theft, practices that you personally authorized. Your environmental standards have been quietly reduced. You've been lobbying against right-to-repair legislation that would help consumers fix their own cars. You've become everything you used to despise. Jessica is running the company day-to-day now. You're in more of a chairman role. The dynamic between you has become something you don't want to examine too closely. You're no longer partners. You're rivals. You're each trying to position yourself as the true architect of the company's success. The marriage survives as a corporate strategy. You maintain separate bedrooms. You communicate through assistants. You're also taking substances to manage the anxiety. You've got a prescription for Adderall that you've been abusing. You've got a bottle of vodka in your office desk. You've got a cocaine connection that you tell yourself you only use recreationally at parties. You're lying to yourself about all of it. You're also completely paranoid now. You're convinced that board members are plotting against you. You're convinced that Jessica is poisoning the well against you to position herself for the next phase. You've hired a private investigator to look into her. You're monitoring employee communications. You're creating an environment of total surveillance and control. Your health is deteriorating. You've had 2 minor heart attacks that you've kept quiet. Your blood pressure is dangerously high. Your liver enzymes are concerning your doctor. You're sleeping 4 hours a night, and those 4 hours are filled with nightmares about losing everything. Level 5, the Hollow King. At 47, you're still chairman, but you're increasingly sidelined. The board has brought in a new CEO, a Harvard MBA who's optimizing the company in ways you don't understand. You're officially still in charge, but you have no real power. You're a figurehead now. You're the founder, which means you're useful for the brand story, but you're not useful for the actual operation. This is worse than anything else you've experienced. To be replaced in the thing you built. To be made irrelevant in the company you founded. You've also learned that Jessica has been having an affair with the new CEO for 2 years. You found out through the private investigator you hired, which only reinforced how paranoid and broken you've become. You should feel something about this, but you don't. You feel almost nothing anymore. You're too numb. You're divorced now. Jessica left you, took her settlement, and is moving to California with the new CEO. You barely protested. You were too tired. You've got the house, the money, the legacy. You've got nothing. You're also developing a more serious addiction problem. The substances have escalated. You're not just using occasionally anymore. You're using daily. You're using in the mornings to get up. You're using in the afternoons to manage the anxiety. You're using in the evenings to sleep. You're completely dependent on external chemical interventions to function. You've been to rehab once. It didn't stick. You went back to the substances within a week. Your doctor says you need to address the underlying trauma, the idea that your worth is completely dependent on your productivity and your company's success, and now that both are gone, you're facing a void where yourself used to be. You don't want to hear that. You want him to give you pills that will make you feel like you matter again. Level 6, the ghost of ambition. You're 53 years old, and your company has become something unrecognizable. The founder narrative, which was you, the kid from the neighborhood who fixed cars and built an empire, has been completely rewritten. Now it's a story about corporate efficiency and shareholder value. They've removed all the old pictures from headquarters. Nobody remembers that you started in a small garage with 2 employees. You're worth $2.3 billion. You should be happy. You should be celebrating. Instead, you're sitting alone in a mansion that feels like a museum, drinking vodka from a glass that never seems to empty, and wondering where the person you used to be went. You've lost track of how many women you've had affairs with. The marriages came and went. You've got 3 ex-wives now, all of whom are wealthier because of you. You've got no children because you were always too focused on the company. You've got no close friends because you pushed everyone away in pursuit of power. You're also aware that you're dying. Your doctor says your liver is failing. Your kidneys are showing damage. Your cardiovascular system is essentially held together by medication and spite. You're not going to make it to 60. You know this. You don't care. Dying feels like relief. You've become a cautionary tale, the founder who lost control of his own company. Every business school talks about you. Every MBA student studies your trajectory as an example of poor corporate governance. You're famous for failing to adapt to institutional ownership. You're famous for being outmaneuvered by professional management. You're famous for being, ultimately, a roadblock to the company's success. The irony is catastrophic. You built something that required you to stop being yourself. You created a machine that ran better without you. You optimized yourself out of existence. The company is thriving. The shareholders are happy. The CEO is getting lauded for his leadership. And the person who founded the entire thing is slowly dissolving from the inside out. You occasionally drive past the original shop where it all started. They've bulldozed it to build a shopping center. The land is worth millions. Progress, you suppose. But that shop was the last place where you were actually yourself. That was the last place where the work had meaning. That was the last place before you learned to want power instead of purpose. You look at the shopping center and you think, I destroyed that to build this. And this destroyed me. Doctor's diagnosis, the psychology of ambition and self-erasure. The mechanic to magnate trajectory is a masterclass in how success and self-destruction become indistinguishable. It begins with something pure, a young person discovering genuine competence in a specific domain and finding deep satisfaction in that competence. But that satisfaction is quickly recontextualized through the lens of ambition. The transition happens at level 2, when the shop owner begins to see the business not as an expression of their skills, but as a platform for wealth generation and power accumulation. This recontextualization is subtle but total. The work that was intrinsically satisfying becomes instrumentalized. It becomes a means to an end rather than an end in itself. What happens next is a specific kind of psychological replacement. As the business grows, the founder necessarily becomes more distant from the actual work. But instead of feeling loss, they feel elevation. They tell themselves that they've transcended the mechanic level. They're now a businessman. They're now a CEO. They're now building something bigger than themselves. This reframing makes the disconnection feel like progress rather than loss. But something critical is being lost: the immediate feedback loop that made the original work satisfying. When you fix a car, you get direct evidence that you did something good. When you're running a corporation, the feedback is abstracted: quarterly reports, shareholder value, market position. These abstractions don't provide the same psychological satisfaction as the concrete reality of a fixed car. The corporate environment also introduces moral compromise as a structural feature. When you're operating at scale, when you have shareholders expecting returns, when you're competing in cutthroat markets, the small ethical compromises that allowed you to sleep at night become unsustainable. You have to choose between your values and your success. Most people choose success, but the cost paid in moral injury is profound. The paranoia that develops is also structural. As the founder becomes more distant from operations, they become more dependent on information from others. But that information is filtered through people with their own agendas. So the founder becomes suspicious. They start to see conspiracies. They start to monitor and control. They create a culture of surveillance and fear, which only increases the distance between themselves and reality. The substance abuse that typically develops is a rational response to an unbearable psychological state. You've built an empire that's made you wealthy and empty. You're celebrated for being a success, but you feel like a failure because you've become completely disconnected from the work that made you successful. Substances provide temporary relief from that contradiction. By level 5 and 6, what's happened is that the founder has been consumed by their own creation. The company has become real and the founder has become a ghost. They're relevant only as a historical figure, not as an active force. And that irrelevance is the final blow to someone whose identity has become completely fused with their productive capacity. The tragedy is that it didn't have to happen this way. The founder could have stayed small. They could have kept their hands under the hood. They could have refused to scale. But ambition, the belief that bigger is better, that growth is always good, that accumulation is the path to meaning, made that impossible. Ambition felt like the highest calling, felt like destiny, and it slowly replaced the person who was ambitious with an empty container that looked like that person but had nobody inside.